the city had learned to ignore the girl in the back seat of the black luxury car. Every morning at exactly 8:30, the car rolled past the iron gates of the most expensive private school in town. Parents whispered about the billionaire inside, teachers straightened their posture, guards saluted. But the girl never looked out the window. She sat still, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on something only she could see. Her name was Alina Cross. She was 16 years old and had never spoken a single word. Doctors called it congenital mutism. Therapists used phrases like deep psychological block. Her father, Victor Cross, called it his greatest failure. He was a self-made millionaire, a man who had bent markets and people to his will, but his daughter's silence defeated him daily. He had bought the best hospitals, the most famous specialists, the most advanced therapies. Nothing worked. Alina remained quiet, her voice locked somewhere far beyond reach. At school, she was treated like a fragile artifact. Teachers avoided calling on her. Students pitied her, some mocked her behind her back. She answered questions with writing, nodded when spoken to, smiled politely when expected. But inside, her world was loud. Memories, emotions, fears, they all screamed, but her lips refused to move. What no one noticed was that every afternoon, when the black car drove home, Alina always looked out the window at the same place. A narrow street behind the shopping district, where trash bins lined the road and the smell of old paper and spoiled food hung in the air. There, every day, stood a garbage truck. And beside it worked a man in a faded orange vest, lifting bags with steady strength, wiping sweat from his brow, sometimes laughing with the driver, sometimes humming to himself. Alina watched him with curiosity that slowly turned into something warmer. The man's name was Hassan Malik. He was 42, a single father to a 10-year-old boy named Sammy. His wife had died years ago after a sudden illness, leaving him with hospital bills and a child who still cried himself to sleep some nights. Hassan worked long hours collecting garbage, not because he loved the job, but because it was honest work that kept food on the table. Despite everything, Hassan smiled easily. He greeted shopkeepers, helped elderly residents carry heavy bags, and once a week, he stopped near a small bakery to buy day-old bread at a discount for Sammy. One afternoon, as Hassan lifted a trash bag that had split open, he noticed the black car slowing down. The tinted window rolled halfway down. Inside, a young girl looked at him. Not with disgust or boredom, but with open, genuine interest. Hassan nodded politely, unsure why a rich girl would even notice him. The car moved on. He shrugged and went back to work. The next day, it happened again. And the day after that. Alina began asking her driver, through written notes, to slow down near that street. She didn't know why. Something about the man's presence felt safe. Real. Unlike the cold halls of her mansion or the endless clinics, Hassan's world seemed grounded in something simple and human. One day, as the car slowed, Hassan lifted his hand and waved. It was a small gesture, almost nothing. But Alina felt something crack inside her chest. She hesitated, then raised her hand and waved back. From that day on, waving became their ritual. No words. Just recognition. Two people from opposite worlds acknowledging each other's existence. Weeks passed. One rainy afternoon, the garbage truck broke down near the same street. Hassan and the driver waited for assistance, rain soaking their uniforms. Alina's car approached and slowed, but this time it stopped completely. The driver looked back nervously. "Miss Alina, your father wouldn't like." Alina wrote quickly on her pad, "Please wait." She stepped out of the car, holding her umbrella, and walked toward Hassan. Hassan froze. A millionaire's daughter walking toward him felt unreal. She stood a few feet away, rain tapping softly on her umbrella. She smiled, then held out her notebook. She had written, "Thank you for waving at me every day." Hassan read the words slowly. His eyes softened. He smiled back. "You're welcome," he said gently, then quickly added, realizing she might not speak, I'm glad." Alina nodded. She wrote again, "What is your name?" "Hassan," he replied. "And you?" She pointed to her notebook. "Alina." He noticed her silence then. Not awkwardly, not with pity. Just as a fact. "That's a beautiful name," he said. Something about the way he said it, without expectation, without pressure, made her throat tighten. From that day, their meetings became longer. Sometimes Alina would ask the driver to stop, and she'd write questions while Hassan answered. He told her about Sammy, about school lunches, about how the city looked different early in the morning. He never asked why she didn't speak. He never tried to fix her. He simply treated her like a person. One day, Alina wrote, "Don't you feel sad doing this job?" Hassan thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But it's honest work. And it lets me take care of my son. That makes it meaningful." She stared at the word meaningful as if it were a foreign language. At home, Victor Cross noticed changes in his daughter. She smiled more. She seemed restless, eager to leave the house in the afternoons. When he discovered she had been talking, writing, to a garbage man, his reaction was immediate and furious. "This is inappropriate," he snapped, pacing his office. "You will stop this immediately." Alina wrote back with shaking hands, "He is kind." Victor scoffed. "Kindness doesn't protect you. Money does." For the first time in her life, Alina felt anger rise so strong it scared her. A week later, Hassan didn't show up. The street was empty. No garbage truck. No familiar orange vest. The next day, still nothing. On the third day, Alina asked the driver to find out what happened. After some inquiries, they learned Hassan had been fired. A complaint had been filed. Someone claimed he was distracting traffic by interacting with a young girl from a rich family. Alina's chest felt like it was collapsing inward. She begged her father, writing page after page. Victor refused to listen. So Alina did something no one expected. She left the house alone. She took a taxi to Hassan's neighborhood, a place her father had never allowed her to visit. She knocked on the door of a small, peeling apartment. Hassan opened it, shock written all over his face. Alina stood there, trembling, notebook in hand. She wrote only 3 words, "I am sorry." Hassan knelt to her level. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said softly. Sammy peeked from behind the door, curious. That moment. Standing in a cramped hallway, looking at a man who had lost his job because of her, something inside Alina finally broke. Her hands shook. Her notebook slipped from her fingers. And then, in a voice so quiet it almost disappeared into the air, she spoke. "I'm sorry." Hassan's eyes widened. Sammy gasped. Alina covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't planned it. She hadn't forced it. The words had simply come. Hassan gently placed a hand over his heart. "That's okay," he whispered. "You did great." Those were the first words she had ever spoken. News spread quickly after that. Doctors were stunned. Therapists called it a miracle. Victor Cross stood frozen when he heard his daughter speak for the first time, realizing too late how blind he had been. But the unbelievable part wasn't just her voice. It was what she did next. Alina convinced her father to help Hassan, not with charity, but with dignity. Victor used his influence to get Hassan reinstated, then promoted to a supervisor role. He also funded a community program for sanitation workers' families, inspired by Hassan's dedication. More importantly, Victor apologized to Hassan. To his daughter. Alina continued speaking slowly, carefully, each word a victory. Hassan never took credit. When asked how he did it, he simply said, "I listened. And I cared." A single dad garbage man had done what millions of dollars could not. He didn't unlock her voice by trying. He unlocked it by being kind.